my fellow Americans.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
shouting. Just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planting information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a prime minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And it might sound radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
Is the US a functioning democracy? Well, let's have a look at it. It costs $2 billion to become president. They have 25% of the total prisoners in the world. They spend over $800 billion a year on arms, which is more than most of the world put together. They've been at war for 250 years since their state was formed 275 years ago. But they can't afford universal health care. They can't afford the $1.7 trillion debt forgiveness for students. They can't afford a programme for the 17 million children that go to bed hungry. Is this a functioning democracy? What's your idea of a democracy?
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem.
ensure-
We can't even agree. We can't even
extremely-
agree what disinformation is. You
well-
can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals
So
are
do you
not
think
impinged, number one.
do you think
And number
COVID
two,
do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament,
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Wednesday. A lot of craziness, moving parts, a lot of breaking news happening right now, up to the minute, and texts flying fast and furiously as we look at what's going on at the border. Hey, everyone, I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
So, yeah, we're going to get to, and on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores, or they put a whole bunch of propaganda on top of it. So we're going to sift through it. We're going to look at the U.S. border situation because President Biden being given an ultimatum, basically saying, hey, the dam is about to break. What are you going to do? We just got breaking news on this Title 42 movement in just a moment. We're going to get to all of that. Plus, we've got coverage down at the border. Michael Yan is there. Nick Sorter is there for us in El Paso and in Brownsville, Texas, where they are being overrun and Border Patrol agents saying, we're basically going to have to surrender because we don't have the support. So we'll get to all of that in a moment.
Plus, cable news is freaking out about whether or not viewers are going to other platforms like the one you're on now, like Twitter. And tonight, CNN is responding to that by having President Trump on one of their platforms. Will this be their saving grace? Is this something they can turn this ship around? We're going to talk about that and see how the liberal media is freaking out.
Yeah, they're freaking out specifically about Tucker. That is the main focus of it. So we'll see how they come back from that. We're also going to look at, this is an amazing story about the United States landing on the moon. Did it actually happen? Russia has a thing or two to say about it. This is an amazing story, which I am very excited to talk about because it's very bizarre, very interesting, and it's right up our alley. Well, so we've got so much to talk about on the show tonight. So with that, Redacted starts right now. All right, everybody, welcome into the big show on this Wednesday. So glad to have all of you here. Thank you to all of you, all of the new subscribers to the channel. We do the show live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you to everyone who is a new subscriber to the channel, whether you're on Rumble, whether on YouTube, and now Twitter. We've been streaming live on Twitter for many months, right, David? But now there's a lot of attention on Twitter, given the fact that Tucker Carlson is launching his new show there. Because I had friends texting me today. They're like, what do you think this is going to mean for Redacted on Twitter? And I'm like,
yo, we've been there.
But I don't know, maybe it'll lift all boats, maybe, right?
We're already streaming there every day, and we also release every video, not a YouTube link. We upload directly to Twitter every video every day. So
yeah, on our Redacted Twitter handle.
I wonder, though, how this behavior will shift because, you know, I was reading some analysis of this today, and some people had said, no, you know, people only go to Twitter to doom scroll. They're not going to stop and doom watch. And I'm interested in that because a lot of times I see things that I would like to watch on Twitter, and I just pull it out into another window. And then I keep doom scrolling.
You know what I hate? I really hate the term doom scrolling because what it implies to me, it's like almost like a mainstream media created term. Like they don't want you seeing actual news, like seeing actually what just happened in the Gaza Strip or seeing actually what just happened in Haiti or seeing actually what's happening in Ukraine. So they'd rather have you watch their sort of a sanitized version of the news through their own narrative lens on their own CNN or MSNBC or Fox version, right?
So then they're telling you what you're doing is like illegitimately serving yourself up news. You should rely on us for that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you should rely on CNN for the real news, but don't doom scroll and look at actual stories that the mainstream media won't cover. It's like I find it kind of offensive.
Truth is doom.
Right.
But just so people know, the Twitter handle is The Redacted News if you want to go follow over there. The Redacted News.
The Redacted News. We are on Twitter. So yeah, come on over and follow us over there.
You can also follow the newsletter and our Redacted community. If you head on over to redacted.inc, subscribe to the newsletter. That is free. So just put in your email address and then seek out that authenticating email. Click, yes, I want that. And then you're off to the races. Also, what do you?
I'm just pointing that you're half in the shot.
Oh,
that's all
okay.
I'm trying to...
You want to see my face? I'll move
Anytime
over.
I point, that's the only reason, because Natalie always tends to do half in the shot.
That's not true, but okay. But the newsletter is true, and it also is true that it's free. It also is true that it is a companion to this show. So if you would like to read more about what it is we're saying, if you'd like to digest it later, if you'd like to save the links, please, the newsletter is free. and we are thrilled to have you reading our content.
Yeah, so go to redacted.inc, the newsletter. You can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes over your cup of coffee first thing in the morning. It's the best newsletter around. We try to bring you a ton of value, bring a bunch of great stories that you can digest over your cup of coffee. Again, redacted.inc, not .com. Go sign up right now. Okay, we've got a lot of news to get to here on this Wednesday, so let's dive into what's happening right now at the U.S. border. There are Border Patrol agents saying that this is war. They are being overrun, using the term broken arrow. We are at a broken arrow moment, and for those of you that know what that term means, it simply means we're overrun. We have to throw up our arms. It's surrender. It's when a unit is basically overrun. But we just had, and we're going to go down to Brownsville, Texas. We're also going to be in El Paso in just moments. Michael Yon is joining us. Nick Sorter is joining us. But right now we got some breaking news. Now, this is coming from CBS News, so take this with a grain of salt. But CBS News claims they have internal documents from the White House because they are a mouthpiece of the White House. So perhaps this is true. We don't know yet. But and we're trying to digest this. So this is from CBS News. U.S. finalizes asylum restriction to ramp up border deportations once Title 42 lapses, which is going to happen tomorrow. So the Biden administration has finalized a sweeping restriction on asylum that it plans to use to ramp up swift deportations of migrants who cross the U.S.-Mexico border after the Title 42 pandemic emergency policy sunsets on Thursday.
These are all double negatives. It's hard to understand. So Title 42 allows the United States to deny entrance to migrants seeking asylum, and it was put in place during the COVID pandemic.
By Trump. Using CDC guidelines.
Right, in order to prevent mass migration. That is going to expire. It was set to expire months ago, and the Biden administration extended it. And now when it expires, so it is like we're talking in double negatives. They're thinking of ways to continue to put in place asylum. So when they're saying they're extending Title 42, it means they're going to continue to deny entrance.
So this is something else. I mean, and we're going to get some analysis on this here in a second, but hundreds of U.S. asylum officers, according to this from CBS News, were trained on how to enforce the restriction on Tuesday. And the regulation was published on Wednesday, less than 48 hours before Title 42 is set to expire. CBS News first reported the regulation's finalization on Tuesday, as well as the guidance issued to asylum's officers charged with implementing it. So, will this actually happen, and what does this mean? For more on that, we are going down to the border. I had a chance to speak with Michael Yon, who is in El Paso. He just arrived in El Paso. He just came from Panama, of course, at the Darien Gap. And then we're also going to be speaking to Nick Sorter, who just arrived in Brownsville, Texas. But first, let's go to Michael Yon in El Paso, Texas. Well, we're following the border crisis very closely. Of course, one day until Title 42 expires, and all hell has been breaking loose, not even just running up until Title 42 expires, but it's been happening for weeks and weeks and months. Michael Yon has been covering this. We had him on the show down in Panama just a few days ago at the Darien Gap, of course, where a lot of these migrants start their journey, or maybe midway through their journey on their way to the United States, loading up into buses. Well, now Michael is in Texas, right at the border, and he joins us from El Paso, Texas. Michael, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Clayton. Yeah, I'm in El Paso. I just got in from the Darien Gap. I got in at about midnight last night from Panama. And as you heard before, Secretary Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, has said that they will be closing down the Darien route, which is completely untrue. I got that whole area stitched up. Nobody can come through without me knowing each village as they come village by village. The numbers are actually continuing to increase. Now, as you know, Title 42 is about to drop, which, and as you've already mentioned, Clayton, it really, in a sense, doesn't even matter because it already doesn't exist. The border does not exist. For instance, in the Rio Grande Valley, which is on the other side of Texas, I'm on the El Paso side, which is next to the Arizona border. It's just completely wide open. There's almost no border patrol there whatsoever. And that's actually where SpaceX is. I've been to SpaceX many times, mostly for two reasons. One is I like SpaceX, and another is the border. And SpaceX is right on the border.
Right on the border. Now, you tweeted earlier that it's what a security concern. And you're worried about the people that work at SpaceX. It's right there. Describe what you're hearing about the concerns of the safety of the people that work there and what they're experiencing.
Well, the border is just wide open. And I mean, I can't even convey how accessible SpaceX is. I mean, it's like blows your mind to see it. It's like you can literally cross the river from Mexico and walk to SpaceX in 15 minutes. And I mean, be in space. People assume, I see people making comments on my Twitter this morning, they assume that SpaceX has high security. It does not. It's like about as secure as a Walmart, and that's not an exaggeration. That's
you've been able to walk up there and take photos of the rocket boosters and other things like that. What are you hearing from the Border Patrol? You have an extensive sourcing of Border Patrol agents, and you and I were texting over the past 24 hours. I mean, they're terrified. I mean, they're angry. They're terrified. What are they saying specifically about what powers they have right now to exercise?
Let me read this message. I just put it on Twitter from a Border Patrol source. This is from at the Rio Grande Valley, which again is that sector right by the Gulf of Mexico, and it's right at the mouth of the Rio Grande River as it goes into the Gulf, which is where SpaceX is. Border Patrol now, starting this morning, Rio Grande Valley, McAllen Station. All Border Patrol details are canceled. 90% of each shift must report to the staging area in McAllen. That's right at the border. This leaves only 5 agents on each shift Rio Grande to patrol 50 miles of river. They might as well raise the white flag. It's done. Everyone will get away, meaning the aliens. Aliens will come pouring over the border. I know you will be out there, so be careful. Go armed. Don't go alone. There will be literally no one out there to help you, and the cartels will take full advantage. Yeah,
so,
that's straight from border.
And I heard you, another Border Patrol agent you were sharing with me, sourcing on this, saying it's broken arrow. Broken arrow, for our audience that doesn't know what when a term broken arrow means in military parlance, means we're overrun, we've lost, we're basically waving the white flag of surrender. That's basically what these Border Patrol agents are telling you, no?
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's truly, there is no border. Effectively, there is no border. And what I think we're going to see, based on my experience over the years of watching this, is we're going to see this initial surge. Well, it's already surging, but it's going to surge even harder tomorrow as Title 42 actually drops, right? And actually, another message, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but as the tents get full, Border Patrol told me this morning, they're just going to release everybody, right? And the tents are essentially full. I think we have 29,000 in custody right now. Could be 26,000. Anyway, it's a lot. And so now here's what I think will happen based on experience. We'll get this initial huge surge tomorrow, right? And then as those people come through, it probably be in the hundreds of thousands. Nobody really knows. Some estimates 700,000. That's probably reasonably accurate. I just don't know. And so experience also says we just don't know. But what we do know from experience is that you'll get this long flash to bang. So when Title 42 drops, we'll get the surge that comes across, and then there'll be it'll just get steady state. And now you'll get this huge next wave as they all come through Colombia and Darien Gap. That's why I spend so much time in Panama, because then I can tell, what the pulse is down there, because that's our big feeder. Now, much of Central America, like Guatemala, Honduras, is already dumped out. Not all of it, of course, but a huge amount of it's already dumped out to the United States. So what we've got coming up now are huge amounts from South America, like Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, just long list. Not to mention Africa feeds through South America, and huge amounts of Asians. For instance, we have a lot of Chinese that go through Quito, Ecuador first, and then they get on a bus. Sure, we've already talked about this. They come through the Darien Gap. And so, yeah, it's a big deal. We have no border, sir.
So no border. And I asked you off camera, I said, what's next? I mean, when they wave the white flag of surrender, what's next? And you sent me one word answer. And that answer was war. War. And that's what we're facing now, unless the Biden administration does something. I mean, do you see any other way out of this?
No, I don't see a painless way out, or even a marginally pain. This is outright war. And this is a weaponized migration. It's an old strategy that's been used for centuries. It's very effective. Basically, just flood another country with your operatives and then take it over. I mean, you can arm them once they're here, right? Which is already happening. I'm getting credible reports. Some are actually making reports for me as they go to ranges and check out who's at the, the 9/11, by the way, there's a great book called Looming Tower about the 9/11 hijackers, right?
Yes.
Of course, there's a lot of controversy about CIA and whatnot, but we know that they came to the United States and they trained on flight simulators, and they actually went to gun ranges and that sort of thing in the United States. They trained for their attack in the United States, right? We see that happening now. It's crystal clear.
So you're seeing this at gun. So tell me about these sources and these gun ranges. You're saying you're seeing that there's reports of different gun ranges, and what are they seeing?
Oh, for instance, people that don't speak any English whatsoever, all tatted up, total gangster-looking guys that are clearly fresh off the boat. And also, for instance, yesterday at a range in Florida, a bunch of this is an incredibly good source, mainland Chinese people speaking Mandarin. He actually spoke with them. They didn't speak much English, but one of them already had a concealed carry permit in Florida. I mean, this was this is interesting. You remember China Ninja that we talked about last time, who he tried to get to Florida on the boat. He got intercepted by the U.S. Coast Guard on March 8th. I intercepted him in the Darien Gap about a month ago, and he was trying to get this guy's clearly like straight up. I mean, if he's not a spy, I would be just amazingly surprised, right? And it doesn't mean he's a great spy. Remember, a lot of these low-level people, these low-level paramilitaries are mass-produced. You can't mass-produce the 007 types, right? But you can mass-produce a lot of the paramilitaries. And clearly we have a lot of those coming in. It's really obvious. You see the Chinese coming through the Darien Gap, for instance. They're usually coming in 5 to 10-man groups. By the way, most of the people that are coming across the border are military-age males from all countries, right?
Right.
It's just this is a clear weaponized migration. They clearly will be armed later. This is how this goes. Now, people can say this is conspiracy theory, but I feel like an oncologist who's been treating cancer all my life, and I've been going to wars and conflicts around the world. I've seen this over and over and over. I know what's happening. This is an invasion. They're going to be armed. You're going to have to fight them.
Yeah, I mean, no one is more well-traveled and more seasoned in this coverage than you, former Green Beret investigative journalist, Michael Yon. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're heading to the border right now. As we get out of here, you're in the hotel there in El Paso. You're heading to the border. Send us updates if you will, and we will be sharing them on the show. Michael, be safe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Clayton. I'll send updates from the border.
Well, now we want to turn to Brownsville, Texas, and that's where we find independent journalist Nick Sorter, who's been on the ground, just got there about 24 hours ago, I think, in Brownsville. And just from reading your tweets, Nick, you're saying it's worse than you even imagined. And I know you were out on the street trying to get a cell connection for us to do this interview, but the cellular networks are just inundated with people using the cell network, so you can't even get online, can't even post a tweet, can't even make a phone call or even do a call. So you had to come back and find Wi-Fi in order to. It's almost like it's just been the networks have been totally overrun by people. Am I right?
Right, absolutely. It was shocking because I would see on my phone that I would have even 5G. But none of that was working at all. Like you said, I couldn't tweet even a text tweet. I couldn't even get phone calls out a lot of times, which is crazy. So I don't know exactly, is there something going on behind the scenes? Does the government, are they the ones that are burning up the network? For whatever reason, I don't know.
Or is it just overrun like when you, or is it just overrun like when you go to a some sort of a sporting event and everyone's in the stadium and no one can send a text message because everyone's on the network? And with the amount of people that you're seeing on the streets, does that look like it's the case? Is it just been overwhelming? Like, just paint a picture for us. When you arrived, what did you see?
So the first thing that I noticed is that Texas, the state of Texas, has a lot more resources down there than it seems Customs and Border Patrol does. which was very shocking to me, actually. I have pictures that I'll tweet here in a little bit that actually show, 100 vehicles, 100 Texas, game wardens and DPS and such that are all convening in one area. There's a staging area where basically I spoke with an elected official here who doesn't want to be named, but he was telling me that they're building a staging area because all of these migrants are going to come through the Rio Grande, and they know that. And so they're going to try to corral them into one spot, a state park, and they're expecting it to be really bad starting on Thursday night, obviously.
Right. So
and they said they don't feel even close to being prepared.
So Title 42, of course, expires on the 11th, tomorrow. What are you hearing from officials, law enforcement officials? Have you spoken to any of them, Border Patrol or otherwise, concerns? Because we're hearing reports that they're just basically waving the white flag, saying at this point we're going to be overrun. We don't have any support. We don't have any additional manpower to stop this.
No, you're 100% right. And a lot of these guys they're very professional in what they do. They take their jobs very seriously. So they won't necessarily say too much to you. Definitely not on the record. But what they will say, and you can tell just by their demeanor that they are super frustrated because they don't have that support. They don't have any. The federal government has pretty much abandoned these guys out here, and they're scapegoating them and blaming them for the fact that immigration is just totally out of control. And the morale seems to be quite low with these guys. And I mean, they're true heroes. They put their lives on the line every single day. And they're just getting crapped on by their own president.
So this staging area, what do they hope to accomplish what is the staging area going to encompass? What is it? What is the means? The people will come there, they'll be processed and just released, or what's going to happen at this staging area?
Exactly. So what this particular elected official had told me is that they are going to, once they do bring in a lot of people, and they're expecting, they're set up for 5,000 a day just in that area. That doesn't include anywhere else on the border. That's just in Brownsville, and they're expecting to have to release these people. And that's another thing that they're so frustrated with. They're almost like, why are we doing this? Because, we're catching and releasing them, and we have no idea where they're going. The vast majority will never show back up in court, willingly anyway. So they almost feel like it's just a total waste. But, even with this setup that they've been working hard on this past week, really, they still don't think that it's going to be nearly enough.
So, yeah, it's not going to be enough. They don't have the staffing. They don't have, we're getting reports, 5 agents meant to handle over 50 miles of territory. How are 5 people going to stop 50 miles of territory? What are you seeing on the streets just among the migrants? Venezuelan migrants, Guatemalan migrants, Mexican migrants. Are you seeing Chinese migrants? What are you seeing as you walk the streets?
So I have not seen any Chinese migrants just yet. But like you said, I did get here about 24 hours ago. And a lot of that, what I was doing in that 24-hour period was going around trying to locate specific areas and some vulnerabilities in the fence. There's actually part of it where you can see the unfinished border wall that they stopped construction on. That would have solved a lot of these issues here in Brownsville. And that's another frustration among these local. This elected official is a Democrat, by the way.
Really? The elected official you're talking about, yeah. And it's wide open. That section, that video that you were sharing is just wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nobody there guarding it. I mean, and he's the one that brought me to that location and said, you're just going to want to see this. Said wide open. It's so frustrating, Clayton. I just can't even.
So in the next 24 hours, in the next, and you're expressing a lot of the frustration that we've been hearing from these Border Patrol agents and these officials down there who just feel hung out to dry. What are they preparing for as it relates to Title 42? Because so a lot of the reports that I've been hearing is a lot of these migrants don't even know anything about Title 42.
Well, it may not necessarily be the migrants that know anything about Title 42. We're talking about the coyotes and the smugglers and human traffickers and those who are paid in order to get people into the United States. They're the ones that know this, because if you recall, they're all going in these massive caravans, right? And so there's sort of like a herd, for lack of a better term, where they just kind of follow each other. And that's how they end up here. So it doesn't take everybody to know about the ending of Title 42 and what that means for illegal migration in order to see that massive influx.
And where are these migrants staying right now? Are they just on the streets in tents, sort of tents propped up in alleyways? Or what about some of the homeless shelters and the processing facilities? I've seen certain reports of over 150% capacity and more than that.
Yeah, so this is true. Yes, so you do see, I know this is especially a problem in El Paso, where they're building tent cities now to try to house all of these people. And what's going on right now is they're planning for these staging areas. That's another thing they have to do, is because, if they can't immediately process everybody. If they actually want to process people, it's going to take a day or two, in order to get all these people through. And so they're expecting to have to house a lot of them in tents in these staging areas, and there will be multiples of them. There was yesterday, I don't know if you saw this from Bill Malugin, there was actual drone video of this massive caravan. You almost couldn't even see the end of it in Brownsville, and that happened last night after I had gone back to the hotel. So I'm going to try to track some of those people down tonight. I would really love to know where they went, because there are so many people.
Well, Nick, thank you for joining us. We'll check back with you. Obviously, Title 42 expiring tomorrow. You're going to be hitting the streets again. I know you've been there just a short amount of time, seeing what's unfolding there. And you're right there, I don't even want to say it's a calm before the storm, because you're in the storm right now. You're in the thick of the storm right now. So stay safe. We'll check back with you tomorrow here on the show. Thank you so much for what you're doing down there and bringing us the real story.
Yeah, thank you, Clayton. Take care.
And thanks to Nick. And, it's interesting because we were talking about the cell coverage, and then we had another report this afternoon that a lot of the illegal immigrants are being handed cell phones. And so wondering, why all the trouble with the cell network? Well, here's one migrant who says this is the cell phone that they're handed to, they're given from the United States government. This is a new cell phone. Here it is. You'll see him opening it up. And it's an ICE phone he's given this phone, and that's a regular occurrence, according to this journalist who's been on the streets there. And this is just one of the phones that they're given with a number on the back. And any wonder why, everyone is inundating the cell network there. Also, Bill Malugin just posting this video just a few minutes ago of the Texas National Guard showing up here and in full riot gear in preparation of this. If we want to prevent a war, which is of course what we want, close the border, close it. This should have happened a long time ago. We've been covering this story on this show for over a year now. We've had guests all over the past 12 months talking about this right here on the show. Why is this news? Remember, we covered it when President Biden went down there and did his little tour in the parking lot, and didn't even go to the border walls. We covered that here on the show. Totally ignored the actual problem. Didn't even speak to the Border Patrol agents,
right?
To hear their frustrations at all. Once President left, a bunch of Border Patrol agents were didn't even address the problem. The staffing shortages, being overrun and not getting support. Also,
I've paid taxes in this country for 35 years, and I've never gotten a phone. I've never even gotten so much as anything.
You never got an Obama phone? They're giving out Obama phones big time.
Giving them money. Nothing.
So Also, one more piece of this that I want to get to is, well, what is the mood on the street? Because now that this sort of CBS News update about what President Biden intends to do with the Title 42 expiration, as we reported at the top of this segment, and as Michael Yon is there reporting, he just sent me a text saying, they're trying to wrap their heads around this because it's all mind games. He's like, because the law enforcement are being told one thing, which is to totally discount their immigration status if any kind of crime is committed. Listen to this report. This is a journalist who's been on the streets there in El Paso. Listen to this. Now he's sort of painting a picture of these old neighborhoods here in El Paso. So for the first 30 seconds or so, he's explaining these neighborhoods and a lot of the people that are in their 60s.
This is a historic district.
There are a lot of people that are in their 60s and 70s who are sort of being pushed out of this neighborhood, and he's sort of explaining what's happening on the streets here, and he's trying to get them to get an interview with some of the people who've been here for a long time. And so anyway, I just wanted to provide some context here, and here's where he starts to explain exactly what the law enforcement officials are being told.
Tuberculosis, chickenpox, and other diseases and viruses that are being brought in by these people. They're scared for their life, and I'm actually going to take you guys over there to try to see if I can get you guys an interview with them so you can get first-hand look into what real El Paso citizens that are actually living this will be able to tell you guys how they feel and the stuff that they've been able to document for us, because police get called consistently by these people, but because there's no way of proving their citizenship, they basically don't report it. Police down here in El Paso have been warned not to disclose immigration status on any crime committed, and this is by higher up in the El Paso Police Department, and I quote, they told them heads will roll if this gets out to the media. They're being threatened by getting fired by the police department if they mention immigration status as far as any crimes being committed here in the city.
I mean, if I were one of those immigrants, I would not take that phone. Be like, oh no, I've heard of Edward Snowden.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't want that.
Thanks, ICE, for your ICE phone.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to be tracking me?
That was the first thought I had when they were unwrapping that phone. I was like, oh, a tracker. Very nice. Very nice.
And they'll be able to know exactly where they're going, and if they're going to corral them, as Nick was just reporting there in Brownsville in this state park area for some sort of fast processing or whatever, or to be released, it's unclear. But if the Biden administration is, according to CBS News, going to be fast tracking the deportation process, like, we will see. Like, it's very easy to track that. It's very easy to track that. So all of these centers are being completely overrun. Border Patrol agents are like, we're throwing up our hands. And I saw a lot of people saying, no, Broken Arrow has to do with a lost nuclear weapon. That's not the case. That's one definition use of it. But in Vietnam, it was used to describe being overrun, and we need air support. We are going to be decimated. Please send in air support or we will be destroyed. And that's exactly what Border Patrol agents are telling us.
They're in the weeds.
They're in the weeds. We are at 150% capacity, and we do not have the manpower to do it. So what will the Biden administration do? This is an invasion of the United States. And we are going to be watching this very closely in the coming days to see what happens with this Title 42 tomorrow.
And did they tell you more about these recruitment programs, though? Like, why are people thinking that they're heading towards a better life? Why would they want this?
Well, if their country is totally destabilized and they're being rounded up by coyotes and the drug cartels, and they're being shipped off and making a lot of money and making $4,000, $3,000, $2,000 per person to drive them up the coast and drive them into these territories, and if these gangs are recruiting a lot of these, because a lot of, as Michael Yon reported, a lot of these are military-aged men.
Yes, but the families that are coming, and for instance, the whistleblower we had recently that was speaking about these human trafficking programs said that there are recruitment in home country by the U.S. government, and the U.S. government is acting as a middleman in child trafficking from these Latin American countries. So again,
and that whistleblower testified before Congress.
She did, yes. And we played it for you here. So a pertinent question that I think it's worth looking into, so that we don't want to dehumanize anybody. Why would they be coming here? What are they being told? Who is behind it? What is the push? Because clearly there is also a pull. This is a lingering question. So we welcome your comments on this as well.
When I saw somebody saying, no, this is fake news, everything's fine. I saw some people saying this is fake news in the chat. So, okay. So this is fake news. Okay. Well, we're speaking to journalists who are there and speaking to Border Patrol agents who are there and who are raising their hands in desperation and surrender. But if you are, if you're a Border Patrol agent, you say everything's fine, let us know. Let us know if you have the inside scoop on that. We'd love to hear it. But apparently...
You can't respond to all the pitches in the dirt, Clayton. Somebody said that my hair looks like I used a low-flow shower.
Oh, like Jerry Seinfeld and Seinfeld? When Seinfeld had the low-flow shower head?
Like it's kind of flat today, so okay, fine.
What's funny is before the show, David said, man, your hair looks great today. So you can't win. You really can't.
Yeah, don't swing it. Don't swing at the pitches in the dirt.
No, there's always going to be a troll. There's always going to be somebody, and hey, that's what you got to deal with. But I sometimes like the trolls because I just feel like, where are you coming from? Like, how does your brain operate?
It's like they say, don't feed the trolls.
I know.
It's like gremlins. They pop and grow. Then you get a stripe.
It's whack-a-mole. Whack-a-troll.
Okay, but we got a lot more news to get to. We're going to talk about, did Tucker Carlson just kill cable news? They are freaking out. Wait till you see some of the videos that we're going to show you. NBC, CNN, the response from the move of Tucker Carlson to Twitter is hilarious, and it's pretty amazing from the liberal media. And not even just the liberal media, just the media in general, because they are so scared about what's coming. And we could be at a tipping point moment. We're going to look at that. We're also going to look at what RFK Jr. had to say about Justin Trudeau, the dictator in Canada. Plus, did the United States actually land on the moon? You let us know in the chat what you think about that. I'm not trying to lead the witness, but I will tell you that Russia has a theory about this. The former head of the Russian space agency, Russia's NASA, has a theory about this. Wait till you hear the evidence that he was unable to get from his own team about America landing on the moon. This is a fascinating story, which we will get to in a minute.
All right, but first we want to tell you about our friends over at Aura, because anyone can find anything on the internet, including your full name, your personal email, your home address,
and we want to thank
number.
Aura for sponsoring today's show.
Yes, we do indeed. I did a search the other day for personal information, especially around my family members, just to see how much has been put out there about us. It's terrifying what comes up. Email address, phone numbers, and more. The information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and anyone else that wants to learn more about you. So when you get an unsolicited text message about, let's say, a political campaign or something that you know for sure you did not sign up for, that's because that information has been bought and sold. That's why we're so excited to tell you about our show sponsor at Aura. Aura will identify data brokers that have your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. They'll even opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing lists. So you can use our link right now or the QR code that you see on your screen. Just point your cell phone at it and it will go directly to aura.com/redacted so that you can try it for 2 weeks for free and see how many data brokers are sharing your information. It's worth just checking out. Again, that's aura.com/redacted, or use the link in our description or that QR code that's right here on the screen. Again, we've been victims of hacks before. We definitely have had, sometimes you wake up and you see those two-factor authentication, like, someone's been trying to get into your information. Check it out. See who's tracking you. See who's selling your data, and opt out with Aura. That's aura.com/redacted.
Yeah, our thanks to Aura for sponsoring the show. Okay, so Tucker Carlson. I mean, it is the talk of the day, of course. And what is Tucker Carlson going to do on Twitter with this brand new show? But boy, the mainstream media yesterday flipped out, freaked out, because this could really be the death knell for cable news. This could be the reason that people say, why would I even have a cable box anymore? What reason is there for me to have a cable box with these crappy networks, with these garbage mainstream media that are run by billionaires?
Expensive plans, all of that stuff. And for a news media that I don't even trust anymore. There was a new YouGov poll out recently that showed that the media is more divisive than ever, and their trust is in the toilet, especially through the pandemic, through the Twitter files, all of those types of things. Now, the media reacted as you would imagine a jealous ex would act. So there was two camps. One that felt like, oh my gosh, he's really going to start telling lies. He shouldn't be back. He shouldn't have any platform at all. And then another that was kind of gloating, like, Twitter, that's like not legit. We're going to go through some of that reaction because it is clearly just fear-based, wouldn't you say?
Fear-based by...
Fear-based, like...
Well, I mean, yeah, the reactions that we're going to show you, the videos of... We're going to show you the CNN, or the NBC videos, which is hilarious. But that's one of my favorites with Brian Stelter is back. That who is going to police Tucker Carlson on Twitter? What kind of government oversight committee is going to get on Twitter and say what you just said was misinformation or fake news? Or who's going to do that? Because we at MSNBC, we at NBC, we are the purveyors of truth, right? Remember, what's her name? Jen Psaki went on The Late Show with, what's his name? Stephen Colbert,
I believe.
And she was starting her new show on MSNBC, and she said, we run everything through like a truth sieve to really make sure it's all factual before we put anything on the air. She said that with a straight face on MSNBC.
Okay. They did so well during the pandemic. Now, if you're familiar, Tucker Carlson decided that he was going to launch a show on Twitter. He announced this yesterday. I think we should disclose that Tucker is one of our family friends. We sort of send each other baby gifts because he was Clayton's co-anchor when they were at Fox together. But we don't know the specifics about his contract, so we're not disclosing anything personal. But we are not also on board with all of his politics, but we do think it was important that he was one of the few anti-war voices, pro-Julian Assange. No, not
one of the few. He was the only mainstream media anti-war voice. The only one on mainstream television.
Yes.
There's not another one on any of the mainstream networks that openly denounced what was happening in Ukraine,
Syria. Yes, calling out the lies in the cover-up of the Duma scandal in Syria. He was willing to expose the money behind COVIDism. He's anti-authoritarianism. He was weaponizing the CIA and the FBI. I could go on and on. Now, even if you don't like some of the things he says, you should want these things to be debated freely in a free society. Most liberals don't. They just want him to shut up. Well, the mainstream media is now melting down because he's decided to go to Twitter and launch his own show. Maybe they feel that this is because the writing is on the wall. Look at this Rasmussen tweet about how, I know, Rasputin, about how the mainstream media is freaking out because they just can't save themselves. Now, Rasmussen has been tracking media confidence for a long time, and their polls are telling them that the prime audience for political news has migrated to this platform. They're saying this on Twitter. What they mean is Twitter. Legacy media hates that, but they can't tell the truth to save themselves. Our polling shows a majority of voters distrust them, consider them fake news, and consider them actually an enemy of the people. I feel like that. Yeah, I didn't until we started this show and started to really research for ourselves. And even, we were part of the mainstream media. And the more I see them just sort of, it's like a snake eating itself, the more I definitely feel they are deliberately becoming the enemy of the people. That's my personal aside. Now, here are some left-leaning journalists that are gloating and punching at the same time about Tucker. Here's the AZ Central saying Tucker Carlson is heading to Twitter. Why he and Elon Musk are a good fit in the worst way. Oh, okay, I'm reading you the wrong one. Here's another one. Here's Chris Hayes saying, kind of fitting because Elon's goal for this site has always been to turn it into the next Fox News. Okay. So, those are just kind of sardonic, bad faith, yeah, he sucks. He's going to suck even more on this platform. Here is Brian Stelter, who now bills himself as a correspondent for Vanity Fair after he himself was ousted from the network that made him famous, CNN.
Question's going to be, will his audience follow? Let me play something Carlson said in his announcement. Take a listen to this.
Amazingly, as of tonight, there aren't many platforms left that allow free speech. The last big one remaining in the world, the only one, is Twitter, where we are now.
Okay. Well, listen, Twitter was already under fire from misinformation, disinformation, all-out lies, anti-Semitism, racism before Elon Musk took over, and now it's gotten kind of crazy, right? Seemingly unmoored, if you will. Will anybody be able to police what Carlson says, or is this the point? It's just a free-for-all.
Now, this is proving Rasmussen's point, I believe. At this point, if the media was sincere and they played that clip of Tucker saying that Twitter is the only place that free speech and free dialogue can happen, don't you think they should say, okay, is the network that I am on a free speech platform? Is it an honest place for free dialogue? They refuse to be self-reflective. They just listen to him say this, and they don't realize that they are then on their free speech, or on their opposite of free, on their speech restricting platform. They're like, yeah. And they're making fun of him. Now, in this clip, Tucker is accusing the media of censoring speech and preventing misleading narratives. And then they just go on and to take a cheap shot at Tucker instead of saying like, oh, are we doing a good job here? Are we free speech? You know, okay, watch how they respond.
I think this is the point. It is a free fall. It's what Elon Musk wants to provide. This move by Tucker may cement the idea of Twitter as a right-wing website, and we see some users trying to go off to other sites instead. Maybe folks who don't want to be a part of that party going off trying to launch other parties elsewhere. But Carlson, you know, he is a prominent figure. He can bring a lot of content. What he cannot do is make $20 million a year the way he was making at Fox. Fox may owe him $25 or $30 million. Yes, he may give that up and make that money elsewhere, but that has not happened yet. To be clear, you know, Carlson's lawyers have tonight, according to two sources, sent a letter to Fox, a shot across the bow, trying to get this going, trying to get a negotiation going to get his freedom. But he doesn't have it yet. So he can't go out there and make lots of money with Elon Musk yet. Basically, Carlson is challenging Fox at this point.
All right.
He's such a weasel.
Yes, and I think it's very thinly veiled jealousy here because Brian Stelter was free to do the exact same thing when he was ousted with CNN. He could have chosen another platform. He could have said, well, I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to try and do my own show on another, more progressive or new media outlet. He didn't. Instead, he's sort
because
of going
he's a swamp creature. He's a swamp creature. Right. You imagine Brian Stelter saying, yeah, I'm going to launch, you know what? I'm unshackled now from CNN and I'm going to go off as I'm going to do the Brian Stelter show on Twitter. How many people would watch the Brian Stelter show on Twitter?
It doesn't matter. It matters if you're willing to bet on yourself. We are former networks news anchors, and that's a hard thing to do, is saying, we don't need the infrastructure of the network. We're going to go it alone and see what we can build. And we've built ourselves something respectable here. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, first of all, I think it's funny that he's at Vanity Fair. That's kind of funny, but he should be celebrating this because he's a person that knows that you are not guaranteed a position in these media companies. He should be supporting Tucker. He should be out there saying this is a good thing for all of us because there is a back door to something that is not going into lobbying, not going into something that's like, you know, on the dole of the government or something like that. Like that's should be a good thing for all these people. Just like, you know, I'm perplexed by how they don't support Julian Assange and things like that. It's like, this is a hill that he's chose to die on, which makes no sense to me considering he was just fired from CNN.
Yeah, and he still doesn't know why he was fired from CNN, he says. He's like, he can't wrap his head around it because he was carrying the water for CNN for so long, defending that network up and down.
But now he's a correspondent for MSNBC, which is like a major step down. Now, if you don't know how it works, you know, a lot of people, they try and do these media appearances where they go on, you know, a network news and then they give their opinion about something and then they try to leverage that into something else. And a lot of times you might want to leverage it to a reporting job at the network or an anchor spot. Well, he's gone the opposite way. And, you know, decided, even if he didn't like Twitter, he could have said, well, I'm going to still put my voice out there. I'm going to still be an anchor in my own right. He could have gone to YouTube. YouTube has the same commitment to free speech as CNN does, basically. You know, there's a lot of things that he could have done, but he chose not to. And I guess that was, you know, for whatever his reasons are. Now, when he's talking about negotiation, about, whether or not Tucker can make money with Elon Musk. Here's what he's talking about. Axios is reporting that Tucker Carlson had a non-compete in his contract through the 2024 election. That means that he could not go to another network and report for them that was a competitor of Fox. And that if he breaks that, he forfeits the 20 to 25 million that's reportedly left on his contract that they would pay him if he sat out the non-compete through 2024. And so that this is showing he's not willing to do that. He's not willing to sit out the 2024 election. And so his lawyer is claiming that Fox broke their part of the contract, so then he should be released from his non-compete and still be paid out his contract. The report is not that the non-compete was not released, or the report is that he is still under that non-compete, so he can't do a show without breaking his contract. Maybe, but he may be also, and this is what I think he would do, but I don't know personally, sort of challenging Fox, like, sue me over it. Let's see, do you want to litigate over it? Because if you sue me to enforce the non-compete, let's say through an injunction, then you're going to have to disclose why it is you let me go. And there is no way they're going to do that. If there's litigation, they'll have to prove why they let him go, and there will be discovery and it will be public. They do not want to do this.
Right. And
so they will negotiate with his lawyer.
And if, according to Axios, it was tied to this Dominion story, and it was part of the settlement agreement that you have to fire Tucker Carlson as part of the settlement agreement, then that will all come out. I mean, of course, that would be that's a big piece of the story. We'll settle with you, but you have to fire Tucker Carlson as a part of that settlement agreement.
Which, would be then a breach of his contract, possibly.
And allow him then that would negate the whole non-compete, right? So if they violated the contract, then he could go off and do whatever the hell he wants to do.
If it's a matter of that payout, of paying out the contract, though, it's worth him to sue them over, or threaten to, because he knows that they are motivated to keep their reasons secret. That's what I think. Now, Stelter goes on.
Megyn Kelly.
Go ahead.
I was going to say Megyn Kelly's take. She's like, I think at this point, he should just do what he's going to do and let them sue him. Let them prove, what they're saying. And I don't know, because either way, he's going to be in it with them.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to want to do that. I think that they will come to the negotiation table, and he will eventually be let out of his non-compete, and then they will negotiate some kind of. This is my prediction, because there's no way they want this public. Now, Stelter goes on to talk about the plummeting ad revenue of Twitter and how this is just going to precipitate that because Carlson is going to scare away all the advertisers. Watch.
100%. But listen, they were hemorrhaging advertisers on Twitter before this whole thing happened. So you've got to wonder what if advertisers were already fleeing because of this, this toxic culture on Twitter, are they going to stick around now for Tucker Carlson, or will more of them come in because
the short
of Tucker
answer
Carlson?
is no. The short answer is no. Carlson was radioactive. He was a drag on Fox's profits. So I don't see how Twitter would be any different for Carlson and Musk.
Oh, yes. The media should really be worried about their own revenue and not new media's revenue.
Yeah. I would like to know where he got those numbers. That Tucker Carlson show was a drag on Fox's bottom line.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that?
We really hated those triple ratings that you pulled in.
Maybe he's to give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he's referring to ad revenue that because there was that whole controversy about ad revenue
about advertisers who would not advertise on that show, but they kept him around for.
But then they came back. That's the thing with all these advertisers; they take a stand for a short amount of time to have a public face, and then they come back because just like all these companies that are we're pulling our businesses out of Russia. Sure they are, and then they just reopen the store instead of calling it
Stars
Coffee or Adidas. It's now
I call them out
Adidas shoes. Yeah.
You always have these companies that change their logo for Pride Month, but they only do it at the U.S. branches. All the Saudi Arabia and all those, they leave the same logo. It's like they don't really want to make a stand in countries where they might catch, So it's all
they just want
virtue signaling.
They just want everybody's gay dollars is what it is. That's how it always works with that.
Right.
That's the joke around my house. My daughter and I use.
Yeah. Now, the media really should be keeping his eyes on his own paper, the mainstream media, because, as was reported last year, CNN's profits dropped below $1 billion for the year for the first time since 2016, and is precipitously continuing along that trajectory. Now, CNN reported this new show by calling Tucker a right-wing extremist. Here's how they reported this news. Right-wing extremist Tucker Carlson will relaunch his program on Twitter, a platform he praised as the only remaining large free speech platform in the world after Fox News fired him last month. Now, here are some fun responses to that. Nice headline from Radical Marxist Extremist Network. Here's another from Viva Free. News network CNN refers to Tucker Carlson as a right-wing extremist. No one will mourn you when you go under, CNN. Here's another. The journalism industry deserves its demise. It's hard not to sort of agree with these because Tucker is a lot of things, but right-wing extremist is not one of them. Now, Elon Musk says he welcomes leftist voices on Twitter, too. Here's his clarification. Last night when we reported this, we wondered if Tucker had any kind of official deal with Twitter to stream a show. I would imagine that in these, during the Twitter files, we saw all of those like back and forths on Slack, we think this, Dr. Fauci this, there was Fauci fan clubs. Can you imagine the Twitter Slack channels about a Tucker Carlson show on Twitter? They must have all lost their goddamn minds. Now, though, Elon Musk is saying that Twitter did not have any deal with Tucker Carlson. And he's saying that Tucker is subject to the same community notes rules and of all content creators. And also, they're not paying him directly. He's going to get these rewards by subscriptions and ad revenue coming soon, which is a function of how many people subscribe and advertising views associated with the content. And he says, I hope that other content creators, particularly from the left, also choose to create on this platform. And in fact, he then proceeded to invite another ousted news anchor, Don Lemon, to do the same. Here's Don Lemon's tweet that we talked about a couple weeks ago in lavender, inexplicably, saying that he was fired from CNN. Elon Musk sought that out and yesterday said, well, hey, maybe you can come here too. Have you considered doing a show on this platform? Maybe worth a try. Audience is much bigger. Now, meanwhile, CNN has invited former President Trump to appear in a televised town hall today because they are reporting that they want to change their reputation from being only Trump bashers to whatever it was before. Here's how NPR puts it, that Chris Litt has sought to put his mark on the network. He's the new CEO by draining it of the relentless criticism of Trump in response to the crisis and controversy that defined his administration. Many Republicans argue that CNN has become too ideological. Now, jump to the end of the next paragraph. It says, Licht has told his staff that they are reestablishing the channel's original identity. Now, what do you think that means? CNN's original identity, when it was the most trusted name in news?
You want my answer, or are you asking?
Yeah, okay. It's not rhetorical.
So CNN was created it was born, of course, out of covering wars. I mean, and it made its mark. If you're talking about like when it became something that people recognized and was in everyone's home, it's because of the Gulf War, right? So CNN made its mark, started really making its money off of war. So is that what they're going to do? Go back to covering imperial wars? I mean, that's how they made
got
their mark.
one in the wings.
I mean, they've got it right now, right?
They got what they want.
They could be covering what's going on in Ukraine with the NATO led war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So they can fully go balls to the wall if they want.
Okay. Instead of what they became known for during the Trump years was sort of elitist, narcissistic, looking down their noses at Trump voters,
right,
and Trump himself, and holding him accountable to things such as, the way he ate pizza or what have you. Will this save CNN and cable news if their new thing is to just be a little nicer to Trump? I don't think so.
Well, I think it's kind of, I don't know if you saw the interview with the woman that's accused Trump.
Yes.
with Anderson Cooper, but I don't know if he intentionally made her look as bad as he did or as she did, you know, as a preempt to bringing Trump on and making him look better, because that interview made him look really good.
Anderson Cooper? It made Anderson Cooper look good, or Trump look good?
No, it made Trump look better because it just kind of like blew her story out of the water, like made her look like she has no idea what she's talking about.
Yeah, it was strange. And also Anderson Cooper looked like he could not tolerate that. He was like, I can't, we're going to go to a break. I don't even know what to say to this. So we'll see. It will be interesting to see the footage from that town hall, which happens in just a few hours. I do think that they owe us an apology for a whole lot more than just condescending on Trump, COVID, Hunter Biden, Tara Reid, for one, like Syria, or Tara. Syria, Ukraine. I could go on and on. So, yeah. And then we have this, I have this lingering question about whether or not other platforms will then shift. This is a point Philip made last night. Will YouTube then change its censorship rules if Twitter becomes a place where we go for real open conversation? Because the YouTube censorship rules are still harsh on us content creators. And so will this then lift all platforms into a free speech because advertisers are willing to take a chance? I don't know, but we'll see. What are you doing over there on your phone?
All right. Thank you for that. Well, we've got breaking news, and I know many of you are calling it out as well in the chat through this whole segment here. And there's live gunfire right now on in Texas. This is the what you're hearing is this is the Far Reynosa border bridge, and we're trying to find out exactly what's happening. According to sources we're talking to, it's been total mayhem. The bridge is now shut down, and what is happening with this live fire? You can hear the gunfire in the background. This is the border bridge, the Far Reynosa border bridge, which is right near Brownsville, and trying to get updates on that from sources on the ground. It looks like it's between Mexican authorities and an unknown cartel. So cartel violence with Mexican authorities, and it's unclear at this hour if the United States is involved in this. And according to reports, it's on the United States side. So trying to get, it's craziness right now. So trying to get some updates on this. We'll bring it to you as we get it, and trying to get confirmation from what's actually happening. And there's people posting who are literally on the bridge right now in the middle of this firefight. Imagine being trapped there. So unbelievable. So we'll bring you updates on that, but that's Texas. Well, all like hell's breaking loose right now. All right, we've got more news to get to here on this Wednesday. We are going to be looking at RFK Jr. slamming Justin Trudeau and what the Canadians are getting. I mean, Canada is turning into really an authoritarian fascist country. We've been covering it here over the past 2 years on this show, but really it's kicking into high gear. So we'll play what RFK Jr. has to say about Justin Trudeau. Plus, a lot of you answering the question I asked you, did the United States land on the moon? We all grew up, many of us were told that, right? That's what we believe. Well, Russia has a take on this, and it's very interesting. And it's not just some fly-by-night take. No, it's the head of their version of NASA in Russia has some things to say about this, and he's been posting about this on his Telegram channel, and it's stunning, actually. So we'll discuss this, and we're all open-minded here. It's free speech. That's what this show is all about. Give us your thoughts, and we will have a discussion about it. But first, are you an investor looking for an easier way to trade stocks? And would you like 20 free stocks? With Moomoo, my favorite trading platform, there's no steep learning curve. It has a simple interface, it's easy to use, and even beginners can take advantage of the stock market right now. Plus, it offers powerful tools that are reserved for experienced investors, like customizable watch lists. So, like the companies that I invest in, they're very specific. Then usually they're tied to minerals and pulling out like natural gas out of the ground and oil and things like that. And I like to have customizable watch lists. Like I was listening to an earnings call today right inside the Moomoo app. I got an alert that the earnings call was starting, and I jumped in and listened to it. I want to hear what the company's up to. You can do all that right inside of Moomoo. It's that easy. Has zero commission trades. The app looks amazing on every platform, from iOS to Android to Windows and Mac. Moomoo can help you trade with advanced tools like their stock screener and their earnings calendar. And right now, you'll get up to 20 free stocks when you sign up and make your initial deposits in the account. If you go to redacted.inc/Moomoo, redacted.inc/mumu. That's redacted.inc/mumu. To learn more, check out our link, redacted.inc/mumu. We will have that link in the description. If you would like to get those 20 free stocks, go check them out today. All right, we've got more news to get to. We're going to talk about what's going on north of the border. Plus, we're going to talk about this moon landing story out of Russia. But if you're new to the show, we do this show every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. We're live. So yes, nice to see all of the many thousands of you today on Rumble and YouTube and on Twitter. Just hit that subscribe button and turn on the little bell notification. And if you do that, then you'll receive a notification when we're live, which is 4 p.m. every day. And just a little disclaimer, because I see there's lots of new faces here today. We have a 30-minute countdown timer that starts before the show, but we're live at 4 p.m. Like Natalie and I come on camera, David and Philip, we're here at 4 p.m. However, we do like a 30-minute buffer ahead of time because it takes a long time for YouTube to send out its alerts and everything. Plus, it's just a way for you guys all to gather up and hang out, have a cup of coffee. Everyone chats in the chat room, and then the show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern. So some people are like, why is there a 30-minute countdown before the show? Well, just know that that's always there. You don't have to sit through it if you don't want to.
No.
That countdown can be as short as you want it to be.
Right. If you want to show right up at 4 p.m. Eastern, then there's no countdown timer for you at all. Hey, it's a free show.
Yeah,
we put a lot of work into the show, and we'd love that if you would subscribe. Go ahead, Philip.
I was going to say, it also gives us time because just every now and then there's a technical issue, and it's much better for that technical issue to get dealt with during that 30 minutes than it would be after we go live. If we just went live and then we had a technical issue, there's no show.
Yes, exactly.
Or like
So
when
that gives
Natalie
us,
shows up crying.
Yes.
That happens.
Yeah, that happens a lot because one of our children has done. People are asking about Pakistan. Yes, civil war in Pakistan. We're going to cover that on tomorrow's show. We got a source that we're working on in Pakistan to be able to cover that angle of the show tomorrow. So we can't cover every story in the world on this show, but we will be covering Pakistan on tomorrow's show right here. Also, Whitney Webb is going to be joining us on tomorrow's show because some bombshell new details about Jeffrey Epstein and just how sick and disgusting this human being is. Wait till you hear what she has uncovered. And it's all part of a lawsuit. It's stunning revelations. We're going to talk with Whitney Webb here on tomorrow's show. That will be on the broadcast tomorrow as well.
All right, but first we're going to tell you about financial censorship because it's real. It happens. It happens mostly to one group and not another. But presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he opposes financial censorship and weaponization of financial systems from dictators like Justin Trudeau. He called him out. Now, you may think this is rare, but in today's world, we see continuous power grabs. And when these politicians get power grabs, they almost never give that power back. We know that during the Canadian trucker convoy, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau froze bank accounts of people protesting vaccine mandates. He justified this by calling them extremists, even though the science behind the mandates is pretty embarrassing now. No government has apologized for them. The implications of this are big. As money becomes more digital, politicians can decide who gets the privilege of using their own money. And if you're bad, you don't get that privilege. Now, we're going to get to what Kennedy says soon, but let's look at an example of this happening inside the United States now. This is a letter from 13 attorneys generals spearheaded by the state of Kentucky. They claim that Chase Bank has persistently discriminated against certain customers due to their religious or political affiliation. Now, can you guess what that religious or political affiliation is that's being discriminated against? If you had to guess right or left, what would you guess?
I'm going to say
I'd say
I'm going to say
right.
right. I'm going to say it's got to be conservative affiliation.
Yes, or
Shocking.
Mostly
Catholic.
Christians. Yeah. Who would have thought that in the year 2023 there would be Christians who are being deplatformed from their banks for just
being Christian.
For being Christian. Now, recall that Chase Bank, the company receiving this letter, kept Jeffrey Epstein as a client, right, even after they had been warned that he was involved in illicit activity and after he had been convicted. They're fine with that. Just, don't be pushing your Jesus on me. That's how they feel.
I wonder, did Epstein have any friends at Chase, I wonder? I'm wondering if he knew anybody there, and that's why that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he might have.
Yeah.
And we might actually, that must be a big part of the story that we're going to cover tomorrow with Whitney Webb, Jamie Dimon, and the big connections.
Well, they had to keep him.
Yeah.
They had to keep him to consult with him because he knew how to make money. He knew how to make paintings. Like, he knew where to buy the best stuff.
He knew
Like,
about
he knew everything. So you got to
neuroscience,
keep a guy like that.
classical music,
Right.
yes, transhumanism, all of that. Everyone wanted him for something. Like, you know, I am a new beekeeper. I wish I could ask him, you know, how do I get my bees above the queen excluder? If you're a beekeeper, I really do want to know how to get my bees in the honey box. Okay, now again,
Once again, that's not a euphemism.
no, this is real about bees. Yeah. Okay. Where was I? Jeffrey Epstein? Yes, because the bank has been pushing back against Jamie Dimon testifying in an Epstein trial. So we know that Chase kept Epstein as a client and that Jamie Dimon had a hand in this personally. But now the attorneys generals are saying, but you are discriminating against conservative or right-leaning people in the state of Kentucky and beyond. Look at what they're saying. They're saying, unfortunately, this is not the first time Chase has discriminated against customers due to religious or political affiliation. In 2021, a credit card processor owned by Chase terminated the account of Family Council, a conservative pro-life organization, acting through its credit card processor subsidiary. Chase stated that, unfortunately, we can no longer support your business. The processor came to the conclusion, at least in part, it is because it considered Family Council to be high risk. Family Council fit none of the processor's examples of high risk business. And that same year, a company called WePay, also owned by Chase, refused service to a conservative group because WePay equated conservative views with hate, violence, racial intolerism, and terrorism. Chase reversed that wholly unfounded decision after intense pressure from the treasurer of Missouri. So Christians are a hate group, violence, racial intolerance, and terrorism. Now, Christians are being equated by the bank with terrorism, according to the Attorney General. And when Chase is asked to demonstrate a commitment to openness, they refuse. I apologize that these pieces of the letter are like this because the letter had a page break in it, and so I couldn't copy and paste. So that's why you're seeing this chunky. Clayton will yell at me about my screens later. Now, second, they say, Chase has refused proposals that would demonstrate the bank's declared commitment to openness and inclusivity. The National Center for Public Policy Research recently led a shareholder proposal calling on Chase to disclose its policies for closing accounts. The proposal asks Chase to commission and disclose a report on the risk created by company business practices that prioritize non-pecuniary factors when it comes to establishing, rejecting, or failing to continue client relationships. The bank ignored the proposal and asked the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, for permission to continue ignoring it. So they just went to their friends at the SEC and said, we don't have to do this, right? Because they're asking them, tell us why you close certain accounts and how you come to that conclusion. Now, recall that Chase also broke ties with Kanye West, who we are calling, what, Yay. Yay. And they didn't give him much of a, other than like, you're unpopular on the internet now because of anti-Semitic remarks, but at the same time kept Epstein. So when the government is asking them, well, just tell us how you make these decisions, they refuse to sort of put it in writing. But when Chase is examined on its diversity commitment, they are all in on LGBTQIA+ policies, but clearly not anyone else. So they're prioritizing these left-wing groups and factions, but not Christians or right-wing. So here is how they put that. It says, third, Chase's actions reveal a double standard. While they refuse to participate in this survey of diversity, the bank prides itself on the company's top score in the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. The Human Rights Campaign describes itself as leading the fight for LGBTQ+ rights. Its Corporate Equality Index measures corporate policies, practices, and beliefs, but only those pertinent to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer employees. The index has been described as basically a racket with the Human Rights Campaign using threats of low scores to secure donations. So basically they're saying, you know, give lip service to this commitment to LGBTQ plus, you know, to these things, and we'll give you high scores, or donate. It's a pay to play sort of. And again, when speaking about the index, they affirm the bank's unwavering commitment to members of the LGBTQ plus community. He says plainly, this is the Attorney General here of Kentucky saying, plainly, Chase has not extended the same unwavering commitment to conservatives and religious groups. To be clear, banks generally have the right to conduct their business, however, and with whomever they choose, but a bank does not have the right to mislead its customers. Chase cannot call itself inclusive, publicize that it opposes discrimination in any form, promise to prevent discrimination against customers, and then refuse to commit to the most basic equality of treatment and fair dealing. So, you know, you can't say, I mean, if you want to, then just be the LGBTQ plus bank. Do that if that's what you're going to do. But don't say you're fair and inclusive if you only really want leftist groups, if that's what you want because you think it's popular. Right,
exactly.
This is,
and I'm offended because you forgot the 2S at the beginning. Now it's 2S LGBTQIA plus.
What is it? What's that?
So you gotta the 2S, two spirit. So
I don't even know. I can't keep track.
It's
it changes every week.
Wait, that goes
pretty
before
soon
L.
Be reciting the whole alphabet.
Oh, this
so
even make it one long 2S
LGBTQIA plus.
Okay.
So lesbians don't even get to go first anymore? Again, we're erasing women.
Nope, the two spirits do because
How can you
erase indigenous, so two spirit.
Yeah, how can you keep erasing women?
Okay. Whatever the F. Now, the 13 attorney generals here are not saying that they will investigate Chase, but that they'd better stop this or else they will have an investigation on their hands. This is just like FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried. He said, if you say all the right words, Ukraine, gender fluid, diversity, racism, right? Then you get whatever you want, you know, in banking world and finance world. It is literally like, if anybody's ever seen that Eddie Murphy skit where he puts on whiteface and then like just goes and says, and then people just hand him money. Like
he's on the bus.
It's a performance. Yeah. This is a performance of wokeism. And it's happening, and it extends to the banking system so that if you are guilty of wrongthink, you are a Christian, you are hateful then, and a terrorist, you shouldn't get a bank account, basically. Now, here is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says about this specific kind of thing. This is the tweet that we were getting around to. The financial censorship of political enemies is something we're used to seeing under authoritarian regimes. No one was surprised when Russia froze more than 100 bank accounts tied to opposition leader Alexei Navalny. But Canada did it too, locking more than 200 accounts of, sorry, I did not expand that, the Canadian trucker Envoy. It's not outlandish to imagine that here in America, your bank account could one day be frozen because of your politics or comments you've made on social media. In fact, we just showed you that happening. After all, in 2010, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard suspended WikiLeaks at the behest of the U.S. State Department. The ability to save and spend without political interference is a prerequisite for the exercise of meaningful dissent, and I will defend it accordingly. This is not a right or left-wing issue. It is about protecting democracy from powerful establishment interests. Now, here he talks about the digitalization of money and how this will enable that more, and we must be careful. That's why he says he opposes CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies, which will vastly magnify the government's power to suffocate dissent by cutting off access to funds with just a single keystroke. That's why he also supports Bitcoin, which allows people to conduct transactions free from government interference. Bitcoin, he says, has been a lifesaver from people's movements around the world, especially in Burma. Now, I think it's important here because we don't often see politicians distinguishing between central bank digital currency and Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. They are not the same. He's showing that he did the homework, which is nice because a lot of politicians do not. The government is sort of piggybacking the popularity of cryptocurrencies and pretending this is the same. It's just our version of it. It's not. It is not a blockchain currency. It is not anonymous, and it is not outside of the government's control. That would be inside of the government's control. So I think bravo to him for making the distinction that Bitcoin is not the same as central bank digital currency. One is good, one is not. Now, unfortunately, financial censorship is not an American problem. This is a modern government problem of criminalizing thought. And another bill that we've been following in Ireland is what's being called the Thought Crime Bill. It would make anything they call hate speech punishable with prison time of up to 10 years. Have you been following this bill in Ireland?
Right. Yeah.
It's incredibly concerning because it makes it a crime not just to communicate words that might incite discrimination or violence, but to possess it, to possess words that might. And so, of course, they added gender expression as a protected group. So let's say there's a transgender child that's going to compete against my daughters in a sports group. And I, on a mom's WhatsApp group say, like, I'm concerned about this. Maybe we should talk to the school. That could be construed as inciting discrimination against the transgender child. And then I could be facing up to 10 years in prison for that because it was publicly communicated or they say intended to be publicly communicated. And again, the idea of like, if you do not participate in someone's gender ideology because the government has decided that self-ID is legitimate biological sex, you could face prison time for it. So this is beyond financial censorship. This is full stop censorship. And, it just seems to get worse. And I hope it's worse before it gets better. Situation.
Well, I say sarcastically, but it does make a lot of sense that rather when somebody has an opinion you don't like, you would just jail them for it rather than, make a stronger argument and attempt to change their mind. Because, that's the thing, isn't it? We all flow and we all think throughout our lives differently. Like I think differently now than I did when I was 20.
Sure.
And it's like, if I'd spent 10 years in prison, I guarantee you I'm not changing my mind. You're just going to piss me off.
Right.
And so I'm going to come out even more pissed than I was when I went in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, let us know your thoughts on this. Again, there's a lot of things happening in the world right now. And yes, we're fully aware of what's happening in Pakistan. And our thoughts are with the people there who, as their country descends into civil war. And it's just the fighting, the bloodshed is just awful. And of course, what's happening in Texas right now. So many things to cover, so many different angles on these stories. So thank you so much for all of your subscribes and attention here tonight. We do have more news that we're going to get to in a moment. If I can pull up my notes here, we've got some crazy stuff going on. Anything you want to say?
No, I've been saying those things that I wanted to say.
All right, let's talk about this moon story. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, you start. You start. I was going to fill some time, but then you moved too fast. So never mind.
You know what? No, I got to get my notes together. So I was hoping somebody else would jump in.
Well, I'm getting a comment on my bees. David Payne says, "Don't use the queen excluder."
Don't use it. You got to use the microphone.
To which then I say, how do you make sure there's no eggs in your honey?
That's a good question. We have a daily newsletter that I would love for all of you to subscribe to. And also, you can join our community. If you'd like to support independent journalism and what we do here, we've got a VIP community. And we have some VIP content that will be coming out for you only, exclusively for our members. Become a VIP member. Just go to redacted.inc and click on the right side of your screen. There's two choices there when you go there. On the left side is the newsletter. On the right side is the VIP section. If you're on Rumble, you can just click the Join Locals community button right there. It takes you there. And for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support what we do here on the show. We are user supported. Someone in the chat earlier said, hey, be honest, Redacted. If Bud Light came to you and offered you $1 million to promote Bud Light, would you do it? And the answer is absolutely not. We wouldn't do it. Now, if Yingling Lager came to us and asked that question, I'm a huge fan of Yingling Lager, I would definitely do it.
If Yingling Lager offered $10,000,
Yeah, if Yingling Lager was like, hey, we just want to send you a six-pack, would you mention that? I'll do that. Anyway, yes, become a part of our community. Go to redacted.inc is the place to go. Redacted.inc is the place to go and take care of that right there. Redacted.inc is the place to go. And no, we never ever sell. Someone asked, Darla says, do you sell our email addresses if we sign up with you? Absolutely not. We do not sell your email address.
No one's even ever asked us.
No, and we have a disclaimer right there that says absolutely not. And by the way, I'm always curious, like, if someone does sell an email address, how stupid do you have to be? Because let's say you had a group of emails and you're like, you know what? I've got all these emails. I'm going to sell it to Pottery Barn. So Pottery Barn would start sending you catalogs. Like, why? I just don't understand. Like, why? Who would do that?
I use Gmail, and in Gmail, if you don't know this, like if you have G Suite or whatever, I can put my name and then the plus symbol and a word and then my email address, right? So I do that, and I found out Xfinity because my email address is David plus Xfinity at my domain name, and I was getting other emails from that. So that means Xfinity sold my email address. So it happens with big companies. That's one way that they claim they can keep things free because they sell your data.
Okay, but we don't do that. We would never do that. We only have our daily newsletter. That's all we send you. So yeah, we don't do that. Anyway, all right, let's get to this story. You guys ready? This story, this is like a palate cleanser story for the day. This is a crazy, crazy story. But here's a question for you: did the United States land on the moon? Just drop it in the comment right now. Just let us know in the comments field here. Did the United States land on the moon? I already see hundreds of people saying no. Okay, just let us know your thoughts on this. Seems like an easy thing to prove, right? We know the landing site. We know exactly where they apparently landed, right? Show us the landing sites. Show us the evidence. And yet the former head of Russia's space agency and certain Russian academics can't seem to find any evidence at all that the United States actually landed on the moon. Oh boy, this story is going to piss off a lot of people. So here's the guy by the name of Dmitry Rogozin. There he is. That's Dmitry. And he worked at Russia's version of NASA. Not only did he work there, he ran it. He's like the Bill Nelson of Russia, running NASA. So Dmitry was the head of Russia's space agency. He later became the Prime Minister of Defense and ambassador to NATO. He has a degree in journalism, so he knows how to ask questions, pertinent questions, and a degree in economics, a graduate degree in economics. His parents were scientists, and he's not afraid to ask actual questions, as good scientists do. Well, he just posted something on his Telegram channel. He has almost 90,000 subscribers on his Telegram channel, and I've gotten the translated version of it from Russian, but he posted it, and it's very fascinating. So here's his Telegram channel, and it's Rogozin at the front. That's what he calls his Telegram channel. And he says he admitted that about 10 years ago, while he was the head of the agency, he went on a bit of a spirit quest. He was trying to understand something that didn't make a lot of sense to him. You see, he was trying to understand how Soviet cosmonauts did multi-day expeditions in order to land on the moon, but when they returned, they could barely stand on their feet at all, almost like they were handicapped. They had to undergo very long recovery times. And he couldn't understand then how the Americans emerged from the lunar modules, looking like they had just stayed at the Four Seasons.
Because they're Nephilims.
It didn't make any sense to him. It didn't make any sense to him that they were they came back refreshed. You know, when they landed in those modules and they got out and they looked all refreshed.
You know the theory of Nephilims from the Bible, like the angels came down and made superhumans, basically.
Yeah.
So it could be that.
Maybe it could be. So he started asking some questions like, why would you see the videos of these guys landing on the moon, right? You see these videos of them, the lunar modules landing in the ocean, and they get out and they looked like they had just stayed at a Four Seasons. Like they're all refreshed. It didn't make any sense to him. So he started asking some tough questions at the space agency.
Four Season moon.
Yeah. So he started asking some tough questions at the space agency that he was in charge of. He wanted to know where the evidence was that the Apollo 11 moon mission ever reached the lunar surface. Surely, we have, as a competing space agency, we would have overwhelming evidence. We would have photographs of the landing sites. Right? You would absolutely have that. You would know with pinpoint accuracy where the Americans had landed. Materials, scientific reports, all of it. We were in a Cold War with these guys. They would know every movement. And sorts of studies. How did the Americans do this? And yet he found nothing. at the space agency. Nothing. I'm going to quote him now. This is Dmitry. About 10 years ago, when I worked in government, I sent an official request to the Roscosmos, which is their version of NASA, to provide me with documentary evidence of the Americans' stay on the moon. They were there for days, right? Which at the time was still at the disposal of the federal agency, he says. He continues, I was painfully embarrassed by the fact that the Soviet cosmonauts returning from multi-day expeditions could barely stand on their feet and underwent a long recovery after such flights. And the Americans crawled out of their lunar ships like cucumbers from the garden, he says. He kept pushing his government, give me the evidence that the Americans landed on the moon. And finally, he got a response from a Russian cosmonaut who basically told him to go pound sand for even asking the question. And he sent him a book. He sent him a book called Conquest of the Moon with a comment written by the cosmonaut Leonov that he said the Americans were there because they told him themselves that they were there. That's literally the only evidence he received. That a cosmonaut says they were there because an American told me they were there. Okay. So the only evidence he got from a cosmonaut was from an American who spoke to him. Yeah, we were on the moon. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, great. So this guy, the former head of the space agency, didn't give up. He says he continued to search for this evidence, but he found nothing. The only thing he got was anger from within his own space agency because of the relationship with NASA. They had a good relationship with NASA. And they didn't want it to be compromised. They told him to drop it, basically, and that he would, quote, aggravate an international situation. So shut up. Don't ask questions. Don't ask anything. But he didn't stop there. He then started asking Russian academics about it, who were in the know, and they all but stonewalled him. We know this is true because in November 2018, academic E.B. Elektronov from the Russian Academy of Sciences gave a really weird interview on Russian radio called Moscow Speaks radio show. And he admitted that, yes, Dmitry did ask him for evidence that the Americans had landed on the moon. So he confirmed the story. And he was put off by the question he described in the interview. And he admits this on radio. There he is. That was the academic who was put off by this. That how dare you ask me this question? And he said basically he was asked, Dmitry then confirmed he wanted him to show him the landing sites. Because clearly you're part of this. You're an academic who worked at the agency. You know where these landing sites are. You have the materials, the evidence, the studies, all of it. And he said he wouldn't look. He wouldn't look. And the reason he wouldn't look, according to this author, and you can speculate, but according to this author of this piece, says that they would find virginal sites. Nothing there. No evidence that the Americans had landed in those sites at all. If they examined them, there wouldn't be debris. There wouldn't be boxes left over. There wouldn't be a rover that they left behind. There wouldn't be golf clubs. There wouldn't be anything that they purported to have landed there with.
MTV flag?
Yeah, the MTV flag. That wasn't there. But the American flag, like they would be able to find this stuff easily. But he said he was told, no, don't ask questions. Stop asking questions. I think this is an amazing story. So what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. What do you think about this? Head of the Russian Space Agency saying, I would just love to see some evidence of it. I'm just asking a simple scientific question. How are our cosmonauts coming back from these missions and can't even walk?
And they're wrecked.
And we have video footage of them coming down in the water and they're like, doo-doo-doo, and, a little rough.
And you would think, because, the Russians, their disinformation, that, they'd be motivated to
show that Americans didn't land on the moon.
To disrupt this story.
Right.
But so then why are they protecting America?
Well, again, it's because the space agency is sort of like extracurricular. It's like the space agencies really are like Hey, whatever you guys governments are going to do and fight a war, like with the space agencies are kind of like this, like it's like a really tight knit community of scientists and stuff. And maybe they're just defending who they think are their brethren. I don't know. What do you think, David?
Well, I was going to say, like, I feel like all of these issues, if we had data to back up these questions that people ask us, we would be proud to be able to give it to them. Like, yeah, we'd be proud to give them that info. Here's all the data you want. We were first, all this other stuff. It's like all the softball questions they get, that they can't answer. It's like if they could answer them truthfully, they would be happy to answer them, but they never can. So if they can't provide data, that leads me to question.
And all we have then is the film footage, right? And we have a lack of data. So we don't have it. We don't have there's no like, we have super telescopes that can like with pinpoint accuracy and satellites and get amazing resolution. We have the Hubble telescope.
We can see into other galaxies.
Yeah, we can look at the Andromeda galaxy, for crying out loud. You mean to tell me we can't zoom in on a crater? And show us the stuff. Like, wouldn't that be a great thing? Hey, and by the way, he also brings up the point, I forgot to mention this part of the piece. This is a big part of Dimitri's point here, which is we haven't been back. He said he couldn't understand how the Americans were able to get to the moon with technology that you couldn't even power a USB-C drive today. How in the world did they get to the moon and they haven't been back for 56 years and they don't even have the technology today to get back to the moon? It's a great question. Why haven't we been back?
Those are big questions.
Yeah,
Those are big, legitimate questions. You're blowing my mind.
We don't have the technology. We didn't have it then. Why don't we have it now? And we still can't go back? These are great questions. I'm fascinated by this. There was one final thought I had on the telescope piece of this, or just the zooming in of this. All we have then, of course, is like the video evidence. And remember when Neil Armstrong and the crew were sat there at that press conference, people always remark at how bizarre that press conference was. Like, here you were on another celestial body. You were literally on the moon. And all of them had just incredibly like dour faces. Like either, and for what, I don't know, I'm not going to speculate. Why were they so dejected? Like here you guys like international heroes, right? But you're totally dejected at that press conference, Neil Armstrong. It's like
Well, it's like a bride after the wedding is super depressed. Like the big thing's already happened.
Okay.
And then you have to get on with your life.
Right.
That I get.
A total lack of cheeseburgers on the moon, that would bring me down.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't know. I love this story. Let me know your thoughts on it in the chat below. Please subscribe to the old channel.
Yeah.
We're here every day, Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. We've got some great guests tomorrow here on the show. We're going to be covering Pakistan. We're going to be looking deeply into this Jeffrey Epstein. New revelations from Whitney Webb will be here. Dan Cohen will be here with some revelations about Canada and what Justin Trudeau is doing. We'll be covering that story. More censorship out of our totalitarian neighbors to the north. So subscribe. We have our daily newsletter, redacted.inc. Please subscribe to that. We don't sell your email. And you'll get a great email first thing in the morning. We write it. Natalie writes it. We collaborate on it. And it's delivered to you over your cup of coffee first thing in the morning. Redacted.inc is the place to go to sign up. And there you go. Do we have any super chats or B comments that you wanted to attend to?
The B comments I appreciated. I'm going to look into that, putting drawn comb above the queen excluder or getting rid of it altogether. Thank you for that.
Did you see the image I sent you of the medieval beekeepers?
Yes, I loved that. I loved it. Yeah.
I didn't even know they did that back then. So
and now my brother-in-law wants to get bee outfits for our dogs. That's a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
We may do that. So... connect with me on beekeeping if you'd like on Twitter. I always appreciate that. I'm just Natali Morris.
Yep. All right, everyone. Thank you guys so much as we check back in what's happening in Texas right now. So it's gonna be a long, interesting night. Anyway, thank you guys. Much love to all of you. Thank you guys for subscribing and being a part of our community here, a censorship-free community, seeking the truth, pulling the threads of this crazy clown world. That's what Redacted is all about, covering the stories that are redacted. And we'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
Bye.